Would you like to learn how to make this lovely rhubarb and raisin meringue pie? That is a recreation from a cookbook from 1953. Stay tuned to the next episode of Hilltop Stovetop. Hello and welcome back to Hilltop Stovetop, the show where we're teaching you how to make great meals in an ordinary kitchen. Today we are continuing our series in honor of Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee, and in this series we're doing a combination or a bunch of recipes recreating things from the Coronation Cookbook from September 1953 that was put out by the Teulon United Church Circle. And all of these recipes were contributed by various members of the community. And today we're going to be making one called a Rhubarb Raisin Meringue pie. Now this particular one, it doesn't have anybody that has name next to it. A lot of these, there's the woman's name, who's the person who contributed it. Today there is no name, but nonetheless we're going to continue to make this recipe. Now you'll notice a lot of these recipes that we have, they're using ingredients that the average household in 1953 would have readily available. So there's a lot of recipes where there's raisins, a lot of very similar spices, and a lot of recipes that have rhubarb in them. Now in this case, I happen to have some rhubarb in my freezer. People in 1953, most of them would have had some in their garden. They might have canned it. If they had electricity, they might have, and they had a freezer, they might have frozen it, but not as much as we would today. And in our last video, we were talking a little bit about oven temperatures and how a lot of these recipes just say a slow oven or a moderate oven or a quick oven. And that was because most of the people that wrote these recipes would have been dealing with wood stoves. And it was pointed out to me this week that Teulon, where this cookbook originated, didn't even get electricity in the area until 1951. So in 1953, there was a lot of people that still didn't have electricity straight to their homes. And even those that did, their recipes were still leaning towards the what they would have had as part of their wood stove kind of technology. So in this case, we are going to set our temperature because the only oven that this uses is when we go to bake the meringue. And it just says, let me see here, it doesn't even say, preheat to 300 degrees Fahrenheit. It does say 300 degrees Fahrenheit, but it calls it a slow oven. So if you were using a wood stove, it would be a slow oven. So we're going to start off today. We already have a pre-made pie shell. I baked this last night. The recipe actually made enough for two. So I made this one ready for today's, plus I made myself a quiche for dinner last night, so that was pretty good. So we're going to start off by making the filling, and we're going to add in 1 1/4 cups of white sugar, and I've already got my pan started to heat. And we have 1/2 cup of water that we're adding to that. Oops. There we go. Maybe make that a little bit less. And we're adding some instant tapioca, and this is what's called minute tapioca. I had a dickens of a time finding this in the store because I was used to looking for the little red box, and now they've changed it. So we've got minute tapioca, we've got sugar, and we have water, and to that we are adding 3 cups of rhubarb. and a half a cup of raisins. I didn't bother pre-boiling these raisins like I do with a lot of recipes, and that's because I knew that there was going to be absorbing liquid that I was adding in here. So let's see here. Yep, that's all we've got. So we got 3 tablespoons of instant tapioca, cup and a quarter of sugar, half a cup of water, 3 cups of rhubarb, and half a cup of raisins. And I like this combination because, as we know, rhubarb is very tart all on its own, but by adding not just the sugar but the raisins, that's going to sweeten things up. Now we're going to bring this up to a boil, and then we're going to continue to simmer it until it reaches a point where it's starting to thicken. And at that point, we'll be adding in the rest of the ingredients. So they say it takes about 25 minutes to do that. We want to make sure that we are stirring it on a very regular basis because we don't want this sticking to the bottom of the pan anymore. And we will see you in a few minutes when this is thickened up. Okay, we're back. We're not at 25 minutes yet. We're probably only maybe 10 or 12 minutes into this. But we can see that it really is thickening up nicely. So we're going to let it continue to simmer while I do a couple of other things. And we'll just sort of move this just slightly out of the way. And we have here 2 eggs. And I'm going to separate these out. The whites will become the meringue, and the yolks are going to go into this mixture to help with the thickening process. So we're just going to give it a quick little split here. And you can get all kinds of fancy gadgets for helping you separate eggs, but I believe in the old just tossing it from one side of the shell to the other. The white comes out, and there's our yolk going off to the side. Now these eggs actually had been out for a little bit, so they're not really well chilled, and that actually makes it a little bit easier to separate them. It doesn't want to stick to the inside of the shell quite so much. So we've got our whites there ready to make the meringue, and we've got our yolks, which we're going to start by just mixing them up a little bit. And we have to make sure that we keep stirring this. Now the instructions on the back of the tapioca, if we are just making tapioca pudding, start to finish, it's about 17 minutes. Now that could be, it's probably because they've improved their formula from 1953. But I was continuing to let this simmer a little bit because you can see the steam coming off of it. So that's helping with the thickening process as well as just the moisture coming off. I've had a taste of this. It is fairly sweet. One of the things that I personally don't like about raisin pie is it's so sweet. But with this, it's sweet enough. It might even be okay to have a little bit less sugar in it, but we're not going to mess with it at this point. And I think that we're fairly well in there. I'm just going to turn that off. And we're going to add in a bit of vanilla and a quarter cup of nuts chopped fine. Again, the nuts would be optional if there's anyone in your family that has a problem with nuts. We'll just mix that in. Now the next thing we're going to do is add in the egg yolks, but we're not just going to dump the egg yolks in there straight, because if we did that, the egg yolks would cook right away and they'd be all lumpy in there. So what you do is you take a little spoonful of your hot mixture and add it into the egg yolks. And then we're going to add in another spoonful. And we're going to keep doing this. And I've got my hand underneath the dish. And when I can feel the warmth in my hand, then I know that the two groups are getting closer to the same temperature. So then we can add the egg yolk mixture into the rhubarb mixture. And you can see right away how that adding the egg yolks in there also helps to thicken them. Mixture. Okay. Now, what we're going to do with this is we're just going to let this sit for a little bit to cool down a bit. Doesn't have to cool all the way, but just to, it says to lukewarm. And in the meantime, we're going to take our egg whites and whip this into a meringue. And so I've got the 2 egg whites, I've got 1/4 cup of sugar here, and it doesn't say to do this in the recipe, but I've added in about 1/2 teaspoon of cream of tartar, because I find that adding that in does help to the meringue to hold its shape just a bit. And we'll get out the mixer and start working with that. Again, it's not 1953. I do have an electric mixer, so I'll get working on that. But remember, when we're making meringues or whipping egg whites, the real test is, can you turn the bowl upside down without it falling out? Okay, so when you can turn it upside down and it doesn't fall out, you know you've got it stiff enough. So then we're going to take our pie plate here with the mixture, which is getting nice and thick now that it's starting to cool a bit. Just put that into our pie shell. Now, tapioca is one of those things, those of you that have been watching my videos for a while, you know that I use that when I'm making apple pies or any kind of fruit pies. I like it because it has a clear consistency when it is cooked. In this case, they use 3 tablespoons of tapioca. Normally, when I make my apple pies, I only use 1 tablespoon. So this is really helping to thicken it. And that's a good thing, because the rhubarb by itself could make things fairly runny. Plus, we've added extra water into this. So there we go. And then we're going to take this meringue and we're going to start putting that on the top. And one of the tricks with meringue is make sure you get it right to the edge of the pie crust. You want to be able to seal that edge so that your filling isn't coming up around it. And this is just 2 egg whites, but it's plenty for what we're doing here. There we go, we've got a good seal. And then we're just going to tap a little bit. I mean, there's all kinds of people that would do fancy things with piping and that sort of stuff. But all I want to do is just end up with a few swirls on the top. There we go. Delicious. Now I'm just going to pop this in the oven, 300 degrees. And how long does it say? It says about 20 minutes. We are going to keep a close eye on it, though, because we don't want anything to burn. But we'll pop this in the oven, and we'll see you when it's done. Okay, we're back. It's a little bit more than the 20 minutes. I checked the pie at 20 minutes, and while it was okay, I felt it needed just a little bit more for my tastes and how it should look. So I gave it 2 more minutes, so that was 22. The timer has just gone off. So let's see what we've got here. I think that looks pretty awesome. So what we need to do now is be very patient and wait for it to cool. It has to be to at least room temperature, maybe even once it gets to room temperature. At that point, I would put it in the fridge for it to be cool. If we tried to cut into this now, the filling would still be quite soft and would be kind of runny. So we'll be patient, and we'll be back when it's cooled. See you then. All right, we're back. We patiently waited until this pie was cooled, I hope sufficiently. Wet the knife a little bit so that the meringue doesn't want to stick to it. And there we have it. It did come out very well. It is holding together nicely. So I hope that you enjoyed today's episode of Hilltop Stovetop, where we made Rhubarb Raisin Meringue Pie from the Coronation Cookbook that was compiled by the Teulon United Church Circle to commemorate the coronation of Queen Elizabeth. And this is part of our series that we are doing to honor the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth. So I hope that you'll stay tuned, and don't forget to like and subscribe so that you don't miss any of our future episodes. We do have a couple of extra treats coming up very shortly. So stay tuned, and thank you for joining us today. Bye-bye for now.